Welcome to episode 2 of Healer Only Run, where we're trying to beat the whole game with only healers with minimum item level and no echo. As a recap, we beat Ultima Weapon last time, a painful fight that took us around 3 to 4 hours to beat with these settings. And today we move forward past base MSQ dungeons of A Realm Reborn into the optional dungeons of ARR and its post-story. All the footage you will see on this video was gathered through my weekend streams, every Friday to Sunday if you're ever interested. With all MSQ dungeons and trials complete, we move to the optional ones this episode, starting out with Dzamael Darkhold. Dzamael Darkhold was a great dungeon to warm up for this session. I grouped up with 2 of my viewers and one Brendo, as we didn't manage to get a 4-man party this time around. Dzamael Darkhold was pretty chill, especially at the start of the dungeon, as you can do pretty big pulls with only 4 healers, just because you can bring these enemies to the blue crystal, which will give everybody inside massive damage reduction, making this into a pretty smooth start to the dungeon. We were synced to level 44, which means that we were just under-leveled enough to keep us from doing our AoE spells. Even though we don't have access to them, we still dealt pretty good damage, so we weren't slowed by a whole lot. The first boss of the dungeon was once again pretty easy because we have access to the crystals. Even though the boss summons ads, as long as we remain in the crystal light, we will be taking close to no damage, making the main boss have all of our focus, getting killed decently fast. The run to the second boss was also pretty smooth, taking small groups one at a time, as from now onwards there is no blue crystal, so we can't do any big pulls, so moving slow is the way to go. The second boss isn't problematic at all. From time to time, each one of us will be targeted with random single target attacks from outside of the arena. We can't do anything about that damage, but we don't have to worry about that just because the damage is so low that my fairy by itself is good enough to keep everybody alive, together with some AoE regions. Once defeated, we head towards the next boss. I haven't really mentioned the blue buttons, where you need to stay on them for us to continue moving forward, but because we cleared each room we went in before we interacted with the buttons, it wasn't that big of a deal. The damage we took from the explosions was pretty easy to deal with. This boss is interesting. From time to time, the boss will tether itself to these crystals. That once tethered, the boss won't take any damage until you destroy the crystal. But the biggest problem of this boss is that it has a cleaving tank buster, so if we get stacked together, everybody will get hit by massive damage, but not enough to one-shot us, luckily. So while being maxed out on HP, even without shields, you could survive this. Once the boss is defeated, we prepare ourselves mentally for the next dungeon, which is Aurum Vale. Now for the most infamous dungeon of them all, well known for destroying any newbie team that ventures into it for the first time. But believe it or not, this was not the hardest dungeon we have done in this video, and soon you'll see what I mean. And trust me, you won't be able to guess. Or maybe you will. I don't know. The first room is not too bad, killing the first 3 mushrooms, which is where you start to see the crazy amount of damage that happens in these optional dungeons, and this will become a trend with future dungeons, where even the smaller of poles can be quite dangerous if you aren't careful. Oh my god! Help me! Jesus Christ! Oh my god, that is brutal! We managed to not aggro any of the big frogs, but we did aggro these floating jellies, but it wasn't too bad. By the way you handle these 2 plants, and the reason you see tanks take enemies into the boss room, is because these 2 plants are ranged and they won't move as long as they have line of sight on you. So by running into the boss room and hiding behind this wall, you break line of sight, forcing them to move closer into you. So if you ever tank this dungeon, you can use this little tip to your advantage. The first boss isn't anything too crazy, applying a poison every raid wide. With how many passive heals we have here with AOGCD AoE regions, it wasn't that bad to deal with. But the one thing that kind of put us on our toes was that the tank busters that the boss would do from time to time, hitting incredibly hard. So if you aren't maxed out on health, there's a pretty good chance of you getting killed by it. Something that you'll see me use a lot throughout the run whenever I'm playing Scholar, and that you might have noticed and thought it was weird, it's that I'm spamming my AoE spell, Art of War, on a single target. Believe it or not, at level 50, Scholar has a really high melee auto attacks, the highest out of any healer. So what you'll see me do is that I'll get close to my enemies and just do auto attacks. And the reason I use Art of War, it's because it's an instant cast that deals the same amount of damage as Ruin. And because of the cast time of Ruin, you actually end up delaying your auto attacks. So the instant casts get you more auto attacks. With all that said, we're done with the first boss, and we'll run to the second one. This boss, even though looking intimidating, it is one of the easier bosses. Their auto attacks dealing almost no damage really, and having really easy mechanics to dodge, which is also surprisingly squish squishy with only 4 healers. So again, we'll just kinda kill him and move forward. Nothing interesting happens these pulls through the hallways, other than a few scary pulls with the Malboros, as they can deal a lot of damage in this dungeon. Now we fight the final boss, Miser's Mistress. So, even though this fight looks very similar to the first one, the big difference is that instead of dealing with poison, you're dealing with flat damage. Damage that gets higher and higher depending on how many stacks of this red debuff here. Which, by the way, the boss will target random people with that debuff, doing a single target attack increasing the stack by 1. And also the seeds don't respawn on this fight. So this would be a scary boss, as it sounds just like a DPS check. But the thing is that if you die, the debuff will be cleansed. And as long as we have 1 healer up, we could counter that just by keep rezzing non-stop. So if we ever get too greedy or get tank buster, we would indirectly counter the major mechanic of this boss, making it a lot easier than we thought. And in general, this whole dungeon was a lot easier than we all thought. Which was great, making us believe that Ultima weapon was in fact the hardest fight in ARR. But let me tell you, it won't take long until I start questioning my life choices with this challenge. Next up, we go to the Wanderer's Palace, the first optional dungeon we do that is synced to level 50. And let me tell you, it shows that it's an optional dungeon because this one is hard. And let me tell you, and to show you why that is. The Wanderer's Palace is a Tonberry dungeon, the one filled with these cute little guys that if you played other Final Fantasy games, you know their infamy. And well, let me tell you that this dungeon and this challenge really shows how scary Tonberries are. Each pull was insanely scary, getting auto-attacked by mobs crazy hard. Not only would they hit hard, but they would also crit very hard as well, making even the smaller pulls be incredibly scary, needing to be careful with each pull. As we get through each pull, dying multiple times in the process, we get to the next boss, the Keeper of Holodon. Which this is the first boss that we really start seeing how much damage these bosses can do and will start doing from now onwards. Doing raid wides from time to time, applying a poison, and also doing tank busters from time to time, dealing more than half of our HP. If we aren't topped off, this guy can easily one-shot you. But other than the crazy amount of damage that this boss can do, it does give us plenty of time between attacks to recover, which makes us capable of handling every heavy hitting attack he does with no issues. Now we start our second run to the second boss with the same shenanigans, playing incredibly safe and pulling as few enemies as possible. Sometimes with even 3 enemies, I would put Sacred Soul on the ground. Yes, I'm not joking, these guys are so problematic that even 3 enemies are worth putting skills like Sacred Soil on the ground just to have a chance at surviving. We have a lot of dungeons to get by before we do that. I'm crying. Oh my god. At the moment, but I'd love to join one day. Hell yeah, dude. You're more than welcome to join. Yeah, these stun. Oh, yeah, I'm dying. Now we went to the room where we need to turn 4 valves, and well. Okay,
Oh my.
Oh no, I think that's a straight up one shot. Run, Hana, run! Okay, that wasn't a one shot, but it wasn't too far from it either. Oh dear, oh god, oh dear, oh this is not good, oh this is not good. Oh big guy, big guy, big guy. I'm dead. Oh, he just fucking stabbed me and then fucked off. Okay. Oh no. Oh no. Ow. Oh my god. This thing. Oh my god, Hana.
My very mad. Madness. Hey, no.
This really is a fucking...
No.
I kinda had a feeling that this is gonna be a mess.
Yeah. This was a freaking mess. Trying to get each valve active was pretty difficult, with us being chased down all the time. Surprisingly, the big Tonberry not one-shotting once he caught up to one of us. With the valve room cleared, we moved to the second boss, the giant Bavrois. or however you pronounce that. A boss that, for the most part, isn't that bad, really. Other than spawning some ads from time to time that surprisingly are incredibly squishy, even with just 4 healers. And also from time to time doing some tank busters where he spins around and deals heavy damage. But again, he doesn't do it enough times or fast enough to really become a problem. So we managed to kill it decently fast. Now, into the dreaded sprint to the final boss. The stairs where you need to kill each enemy fast enough so the big Tonberry that spawns behind you doesn't get you. There was an absolute horror game moment right here. I'm gonna say it again, dude. This dungeon really shows how scary Tonberries are, and well... Oh no. Hana's always the victim of the big Tonberry. I'm dead. Again.
It's after me.
Oh god. Hana, do not aggro the other Oh no! Okay, I think Hana is safely like dead.
Yeah, I would have died anyway, so...
Yeah. The first attempt at the stairs wasn't very successful, but thankfully, the enemies don't respawn, which makes this so much easier. But the one thing that does respawn again is the big Tonberry, so we're still on the timer to clear the whole room. With the room clear, we jump into the final boss, and holy was this one of the tougher bosses of the challenge, for sure. This is the Tonberry King. Even though I fought this boss for a very long time, I still don't fully understand his gimmick, so if you know how this fight fully works, be sure to let me know in the comments. But let me tell you what I know. The boss will periodically spawn minions from time to time that will very slowly chase one of us, dealing massive physical damage if they get to us. Killing one of the minions gives the boss a buff that increases its damage. Every time the boss gains a stack, the attack Everyone's Crutch will deal more and more damage, which we found out that at 5 stacks, it's a one-shot. But the thing is that if we ignore the ads, they will start machine gunning these deadly AoEs that completely wreck you. And this whole challenge, this is the first dungeon boss we wipe to, making me really concerned for any future dungeons, and let me tell you how right I was to be worried. This boss took us around 20 minutes of attempts. Trying to figure out how this boss works, sometimes this boss would completely ignore previous mechanics and decide to send multiple of us into the Shadow Realm just because he felt like it. The one strategy that hilariously worked is that the boss is pretty slow, so you could get away by just kiting the boss around the whole arena, while everybody else in the party focused on dealing damage to the boss, while also killing the minions that do AoEs. Even though it gives stacks to the boss, as long as we have one healer up, we can always res the other person and have someone take the torch and start kiting the boss as well. Dude, we were all shocked with how long it took for us to beat this guy. This guy has no right of being dissed off, but he sure was. But let me tell you, this was one of the funniest bosses that we fought yet. Kill it! Fucking finally! Oh my god.
Out, I'm out.
Oh my god. Once defeated, we go to the next final dungeon for today, Amdapor Keep. And my guy, let me freaking tell you, this was the definition of pain. So as you might have noticed, I was playing Scholar most of the time in this session, as I just straight up felt like playing it. But this dungeon was the first one to make me switch and the others switch classes because of one singular boss. One boss that you normally don't even bat an eye, as you usually kill it in a matter of seconds. But on this run, he was a beast. A beast that rivaled Ultima weapon, that is. But first things first, let's talk about the enemies here. As to nobody's surprise, they are incredibly scary, requiring us to use a lot of our cooldowns, but the biggest baddie of these pulls are the Dullahans. These guys are like mini bosses. Well, maybe not, but they hit like they're a boss, dealing more than 1000 damage per auto attack, which they can also empower to deal even more damage. So if you were to pull a Dullahan by accident while dealing with other enemies, that would guarantee that one of us would die to it. So what we ended up doing is that we decided to deal with them one by one, which worked pretty well, all things considered. So with every enemy cleared, we get ourselves into the first boss. At first, thinking that this was going to be a pretty easy clear, as I could only imagine that the final boss of this dungeon would be the biggest problem. But how wrong I was. Psyche Flare is one nasty boss for this run. The biggest problem is that it deals raid-wise that deal a lot of damage. It summons golems that once killed will get resurrected by the boss. Summons a massive golem that does incredibly massive AoEs that must be dodged. And this golem will keep doing it until the main boss is dead. But I haven't even mentioned the worst mechanic, which to nobody's surprise, it's another tank buster. A tank buster that happens so often and so fast that most of the time we were caught off guard with it. A tank buster equal to Ultimas, where it doesn't really matter if you're full HP, if you do not have a shield and some mitigation, you will straight up die. This fight was so insane that most of the time in the fight, we would be running out of mana because of how much shielding and healing needing to be done, while also continuing damaging the boss. Believe it or not, using healer limit break here was incredibly useful, helping us save as many resources as possible. And it is something we will end up using more and more as we continue with this run. At first, we thought that we could leave the two golems that the boss summons alive and just deal with them as we go. But let me tell you how bad of an idea that was. If you don't kill those golems, each golem will do a massive raid wide. That if you are unlucky enough, the boss will combo it with its own raid wide, absolutely deleting all of us. So that was out of the question. We had to kill the golems while also damaging the boss, while also keeping everybody alive, which the tank busters did not help. So we decided that the scholar isn't very good here because I couldn't react fast enough for the tank buster, so I decided to switch to Sage as I thought that the instant shields would be very powerful, and of course the two phlegma charges would be very helpful to burst any enemy as fast as possible. Karakoli also helped a lot, a Sage skill that reduces the incoming damage by 10%. As it's also an instant cast, it made reacting to the tank buster incredibly useful. Psyche Flare can be stunned by White Mage's Holy, so from time to time we would try to stun the boss every time they would start casting. But the thing is that if you weren't aware, every enemy will gain full immunity to stunning after 3 stuns, making further holies not be able to stun any longer, so we would need to make these stuns count. On your shield! Oh! Okay. Thank you.
Let me see again. Nice, crit shield.
Oh, beautiful. I'm just trying so hard. I'm looking at my fucking, like, the enemy cast bar so hard. Did you see that? The boss got stunned again. And here I was saying they would gain permanent immunity to stunning, but I don't know why it didn't cross my mind that the immunity is just temporary. I don't know exactly how long it lasts, but let me tell you how happy I was that we could keep stunning him and avoiding tank busters like this. We kill this freaking squid and move forward. Thankfully, the mob pools for the second and third boss aren't anything special. Other than the usual thing of us being careful and whatnot, nothing really happens, so I'm just gonna talk about the final 2 bosses, as that is the most interesting thing about these dungeons, let us be real. The second boss of the Amdapor Keep is the Demon Wall, a boss that will over time move forward, and if you don't kill it fast enough, it will kill you instead. Though thankfully, instead of being a one-shot, it's just a poison. A very weak poison at that. Of course, we can't all forget about the hilarious mechanic that gets most people killed, aka repel. We gotta, that is oh, repel again.
Okay.
Damn. Yeah. Nope.
Nope.
Cannot. A knockback mechanic that if you're just slightly to the side of the boss, that'll be enough to send you flying over the edge. Now we move to the final boss, the Anantaboga. A pretty tough boss all things considered, but not as tough as the Psyche Flare. The boss will do these 2 attacks from time to time, the Look and the Run Breath. And it feels like if the Run Breath is used first and then he uses the Look, The damage of that attack is increased, making it quite the scary combo as the boss doesn't give you enough time to heal up and prepare a shield unless we are expecting it. But the biggest mechanic of this boss is the catastrophe, where the boss will do a raid ride that will deal a lot of damage. What you're supposed to do is hide behind these statues to avoid the full damage. But this mechanic does something else. After the raid ride goes off, one of the statues disappears and gets replaced by an enemy, which makes it into a messy fight while dealing both with the boss and the ad. It took us a little bit to learn the fight, but when we get all the statues gone and all enemies are dead, the raid ride is doable as long as we prepare for it. Because the cast time is so long, it gave us more than enough time to prepare. Even if we had a few deaths, we didn't die fast enough to the point that it wasn't unrecoverable, which made the fight so much nicer. And Anatamboga goes down, making us conclude the dungeon and the second episode of Healer on the Run. I really thought that Ultima Weapon would have been the toughest boss we'll deal with throughout the entirety of A Realm Reborn, but we got so humbled by the optional dungeons. But now the question is, will there be a harder dungeon with even harder bosses than what we dealt with today? Spoilers? Yes, there will be. Thank you all for watching until now. If you're ever interested in joining this challenge run, be sure to follow me on Twitch to catch me live there, or just look out for my YouTube live as well. I'm live every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so feel free to stop by and say hi. But for now, I'll see you on the third episode of Healer on the Run.